I've always had a knack for picking up on people's emotions. It's like a sixth sense, but instead of seeing dead people, I feel the living ones. At first, it was just a quirk, something I never thought much about. But as the years passed, it became a burden I couldn't escape, a relentless torrent of emotions that threatened to drown me. It started innocently enough. I could sense when someone was happy or sad, elated or anxious. It was as if their feelings were projected onto me, and I couldn't help but absorb them. Friends thought I was empathetic, and they'd come to me with their problems, seeking comfort in my presence. But little did they know, I was suffering too. As the years went by, my ability became more pronounced. I couldn't be in a crowded room without being bombarded by a cacophony of emotions. In a bustling cafe, I'd feel the jumble of excitement, exhaustion, and heartache from the patrons. At parties, I'd become a living emotional sponge, soaking up the highs and lows of every guest. I tried to avoid people, to isolate myself from the relentless emotional assault. I spent days in solitude trying to regain my sanity, but the isolation drove me to the brink of madness. The loneliness was its own kind of torment, and it seemed the only escape was to rejoin the world and face the emotional tidal wave. My relationships crumbled under the weight of my affliction. Friends drifted away, unable to handle the constant emotional turmoil that came with being around me. Romantic relationships were even harder. I fell in love a few times, but the intense emotions that coursed through me often overwhelmed my partners. They couldn't bear the constant roller coaster of feelings. I turned to therapy, hoping to find a way to control or even block my ability. The therapists, with their clinical detachment, did their best to help. They suggested mindfulness techniques and medication, but nothing could silence the emotional storm that raged within me. Desperation led me to seek solace in alcohol. On some level, I believed that drowning my own emotions in a sea of booze might provide some relief, but it only made things worse. The alcohol intensified my sensitivity, and the hangovers left me even more emotionally fragile. The breaking point came one rainy night. I was walking through a dimly lit alley when I stumbled upon a couple arguing. Their emotions hit me like a tidal wave, crashing over me with a force that left me gasping for breath. The anger, the hurt, the desperation, it was all too much. I sank to my knees, clutching my head, trying to block out the onslaught of emotions. Passers-by stared, concerned, but I couldn't explain what was happening. I was unraveling, losing myself in a maelstrom of other people's feelings. And then, in that alley surrounded by strangers, I finally cracked. The madness took hold, and I let out a guttural scream, unleashing all the pent-up emotions that had been tearing me apart. The pain, the sorrow, the anguish. It poured out of me like a torrent, and I was powerless to stop it. The authorities arrived, and I was taken away, deemed a danger to myself and others. I spent years in institutions, strapped to a bed, drugged into a numb stupor. It was the only way to silence the emotions that had driven me to madness. Now, I live in a world of sterile white walls and a perpetual haze of medication. I'm no longer a vessel for other people's emotions, but I'm also no longer truly myself. I am a shell of the person I once was, lost in a sea of numbness, forever separated from the world that drove me to madness.